Hello everybody, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at your severe weather outbreak, which is going to be going over parts of the south central and southeastern United States. We already have a moderate risk in place for tomorrow, which would be the 19th, and it would also be Sunday the 19th. And this is just 1 week after we had that tornado outbreak over areas over the southeast, where you saw an EF3 and an EF4. Both of them tracked over 60 miles, which is very long for a tornado storm track path. So those were very destructive and deadly tornadoes, and we had many fatalities on that day. So unfortunately, we are going to have over pretty much the same area, just a little bit further to the south, but it still includes some of those same areas with another severe weather outbreak. And again, it's going to be going from the 18th through the 20th. Today would be the 18th, and Monday would be the 20th. And I think really it's going to be tomorrow, the Sunday the 19th, which is going to be your really big focus for your severe weather. I think that's where you're going to have the biggest threat of severe weather. Now, let's start looking at your National Weather Service, and then we're going to go straight into the Storm Prediction Center and some of the modelings and what they're forecasting with this event. We have some red flag warnings over parts of the Southwest, including Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, as well as some flood watches through Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. We have some freeze watches in those lighter blues through Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, through Virginia, and then through Delaware, Pennsylvania, and a little bit there of New Jersey. And then for New Jersey and Pennsylvania, we have some freeze warnings as well, because the growing season has already started, and you have a very cold air mass for this time of year in place over those areas. Now, here's what the Storm Prediction Center is putting out for today, and most of the severe weather is currently ongoing for today. You have a marginal risk. This isn't going to be really a huge threat. Usually marginal risks just lead to some wind damage. Now, if we look at your tornado threat, you have a 2% chance over Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas for today. So not a huge threat. Definitely the possibility is still there that you could see an EF0 or maybe even an EF1 tornado out of this. But definitely I don't think it's going to be something that's too big of an issue just for today. But for tomorrow, definitely I think it's going to be a bigger issue. Your wind your threat for wind damage over northern Florida, southern Alabama, Mississippi, much of Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and eastern Texas, a 5% chance there. And for your hail, pretty much the same area, extends a little bit further north, where you also have a 5% chance of seeing some hail in those regions. Now, let's go for tomorrow, and this would be Sunday the 19th. Again, we have a slight risk there for just kind of skimming the northern sections of South Carolina, of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and then through Arkansas, and then down through Texas. And then we have an enhanced risk in that orange region, and then encased in that we have a moderate risk in that red. And you don't see that too often. I know it kind of seems that the Storm Prediction Center puts a moderate risk out fairly often, just because we've had two in about a week. But this is really something that's really you need to pay attention to when you do see a moderate risk. That's a level 4 out of 5 for the Storm Prediction Center, so it's a very high risk of seeing some severe weather. Now, if you look at your tornado threat, we have a 2% chance in that green, a 5% chance in the brown, and that's even where you should be paying attention a lot if you're in that 5% chance. But if you're in that 10% chance or that 15% chance, again, they rarely pull those the yellows and the reds out on those tornado maps, and they also have a significant hatched region over the 10% and 15% chance region. That's where you have the chance of seeing EF2 to EF5 tornadoes, and you also have a 10 to 15% chance of seeing those EF2 to EF5 tornadoes. So it's definitely a very big threat here that you do see some pretty destructive, long tracking, damaging tornadoes here. Now, in terms of hail, you're also going to see quite a bit of that. 5% chance in the brown, 15% chance in the yellow, and then we have a 30% chance in that red. And then on the western edge of that red of that 30% area, and then also the western edge of that 15% area, we have a significant hatched region where you have the 10% or greater probability of seeing 2-inch diameter hail or greater. Now let's start looking at tomorrow, or this would be actually 2 days from now, and this would be for Monday, the 20th, and we are seeing a marginal risk along the South Carolina and North Carolina coast as well there for a little bit of Georgia, and then slight risk there for the immediate coastline of North Carolina, South Carolina, and then again a little bit of Georgia. For your probabilistic forecast of seeing some severe weather, basically those same areas are under a 5 to 15% chance of a threat of seeing some severe weather. Now let's start looking at your models and what they're putting out in terms of that severe weather. Now we do have some thunderstorms currently going on through parts of Florida and then down through Louisiana and southern Texas. Now as we continue this, today really isn't going to be a big threat. You're going to have a couple of thunderstorms, but it's not going to be anything too severe, and you might not even hear any thunder with those thunderstorms. They're not going to have a lot of the ingredients that you need. But as you get to tomorrow, the Gulf of Mexico is wide open, and you do have a lot of moisture that's going to move through. Now something that's going to restrict this is it's not going to be like last weekend where you had that big storm over the Midwest, and that was moving eastward, and it was a very intense low pressure system that was moving through. You also had a high pressure, and that made an intense pressure gradient, which allowed some of these thunderstorms to kind of fuel up over that. And you had the Gulf of Mexico just pulling in moisture, and you had a lot of the ripe ingredients that you need for severe weather, and you have some of those ingredients, but you don't have that really big low pressure system up in to the north, and you don't have that really strong high pressure system to create that pressure gradient. So it's not going to be as severe as last week, but definitely still something that you have to pay close attention to. This is going to be by Sunday morning, right around 4 in the morning for Central Time, and this would be about 5 in the morning for Eastern Time or so. And you start to see a lot of these thunderstorms starting to pop up, and they're very spread out as well. You have this one big cluster, but then according to the NAM 3CAM model, and this is the model that we're looking at, we have a couple of those thunderstorms that look to kind of spread out. Now, this isn't going to indicate exactly where they are, but it's going to give you a general idea of what type of thunderstorms that you're going to look at and the general location that you're going to see those thunderstorms in. So, starting off the day, it's going to start further to the north over parts of northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. But as we continue through the day, you're going to have this next round that moves through. This round is going to move all the way to the South Carolina and Georgia coastline, and then you have this the next thunderstorm batch, which is further to the south, and this is going to be your main severe weather threat. Now, as we continue, this is going to be by Sunday, right around 2 to 3 p.m. Central or Eastern Time. And we do have some pretty intense thunderstorms moving through. We're also going to look at your Cape values and a couple other metrics to see how intense the severe weather is going to be. Now, this is going to be by right around your afternoon to evening time, and now getting through the overnight. You're starting to see these thunderstorms continuing, and now as you're moving through on Monday, right around midnight, you're seeing that line of thunderstorms move through Mississippi and Alabama, and then you're seeing them move further to the east. You do have some thunderstorm activity closer to the coastline, and as we continue, this is going to be by about Monday morning, and it starts to fizzle out, but you do have a couple of rogue severe weather events or severe thunderstorms moving through South Carolina and North Carolina by this point, but it looks to be more of a line of thunderstorms, and doesn't look like it's going to be more of those individual supercells that are going to develop, which are usually the more dangerous ones. Now, as we continue, this starts to move out by about Monday, right around 4 to 5 p.m. Now, as we continue looking at a couple other metrics, let's start looking at your dew points, and you usually want above 60 dew points to see some pretty good severe weather, and your 60 would be right along this where the blue transitions to the yellows and the oranges, and once you get into the oranges, you're really starting to get some pretty high dew points, and that's where your thunderstorms are really going to thrive. Now, this is going to be by Sunday, right when your thunderstorms are starting to fire up. You see we have dew points in the 70s, upper 60s, and you see that 60 dew point line starting to move further and further to the north. And as we continue, it starts to move even further to the north, where much of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, as well as South Carolina, are in those dew points of around the upper 50s to in the 60s, and even some in the 70s there as we get further to the south. Now, as we get through Monday, those dew points start to tail off with this incoming cold front, and as we continue this, you see a sharp decrease in these dew points, and they start to really taper off as we get through Monday. Now, as we continue to look at your Cape values, this is your convective available potential energy, showing you how much energy you have in the atmosphere. Usually, you want to get somewhere within this lightest blue here, and that's where you're really going to see most of your severe weather. If you get within those blues and then through the yellows, oranges, and even into the darker reds, that's where you have the best best shot of seeing some severe weather. Now, as we continue this is going to be by Sunday, right around when your thunderstorms are firing up. Your batch of thunderstorms right back here through northwest Louisiana by this point. That batch that is further to the south, that's going to be the more potent one. You have Cape values ahead of this around 3 to 4,000 within those locations. So it's a very ripe environment for those thunderstorms to really fire up and really get going. Now this would be by Sunday when those thunderstorms are firing up around about 2 to 6 p.m. And as we continue this, you start to see little gaps in the Cape values. That means that there's a thunderstorm eating up all the energy from the atmosphere, and that's a rapidly rising cloud top that's going to lead to a severe thunderstorm. And you do see a little bit of that over southern Mississippi, and as we continue this, those start to kind of move through areas through Georgia, and that could lead to some very severe thunderstorms and even some supercells, which we'll look at right now. Now, here's your supercell composite index, and this is going to show you once you get above about a 1 or a 2, that's where you have the threat of supercells developing. And of course, the higher that value gets, the more chance you have of a supercell developing. And supercells are those very strong thunderstorms that move through, and those can sometimes produce some tornadoes. Now, I don't like to use the significant tornado parameter, and that's just because it's not very. It kind of is misleading sometimes. It shows some very high values sometimes, and they can be very misleading. So I like to use this instead because this shows you where your supercells are going to be, and this can indicate where you're going to get your hail, your tornadoes, and even some of your severe thunderstorms. Now, as we continue this is going to be through Sunday morning. You start to see some of those values get right around 3.5 to about 6 over those regions, but it's going to really start to intensify where you're getting some values up to 12 to even 16 in some regions, and that's right along that really cold front and that boundary, where just to the north you have values of about 0 or very low values, and then as you go just to the south you're seeing values of about 6 to about 12 or even more. Now this is going to be by Sunday afternoon and evening, and it starts to move through areas through Mississippi, Alabama, and that's your real batch of thunderstorms that's moving through, and that's your very heavy and strong thunderstorms that are going to be moving through. And as we continue, you are going to see those thunderstorms moving through areas like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and then all the way through parts of South Carolina and North Carolina. Now, I don't have the rainfall maps put up, but the Weather Prediction Center is actually putting out an area of about 5 to 7 inches of rainfall accumulation out of this, and that's over the next 7 days. But they did have that for quite a couple of days, and that to me indicates that they're thinking that this severe weather outbreak could also lead to, unfortunately, some flooding over these regions. So I apologize for not having the map up, but definitely I think that is a possibility that you see. They had that maxed out region of 5 to 7, and that was right around central Alabama and central Mississippi. So if you do live in that area, beware of some flooding possibilities. But even all of the areas that were in that enhanced or slight risk were under some sort of a precipitation amount between 3 and 7 inches. So really, it's going to be a very intense severe weather day, and everybody has to be on high alert throughout the southeast if you do live in any of these areas that are going to be affected by these severe thunderstorms. Anyways, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. I hope you guys are all enjoying your day, and I'm going to see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.